Enki Enlil Thoth Anunnaki Archons Reptilians Serpent Beings Illuminati Singularity Nag Hammadi Mind Control latest Gerald Clark Leak Project. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us this edition of Leak Project. I'm your host, Rex Bear, and we have returning guest Gerald Clark with us. We dive into a bounty of topics, and we get deep, folks. Gerald actually worked with DARPA for 7 years, and during much of that time, he programmed AI networks combined with computer chips that he essentially designed from scratch to run some of the most incredible programs you could imagine. And this was almost 20 years ago. We talk in detail about Thoth, Hermetics, the ancient teachings that go all the way back to Atlantis. We get into the Archons, the Serpent Beings, the Nag Hammadi treaties. We talk about the holographic model of the universe. Gerald gets into detail on lower dimensional beings, the age of Aquarius. Now, some of you might listen to this presentation 3-4 times and still want to go back into it because the amount of detail and depth that is presented is way above and beyond your typical hour-and-a-half program. So make sure not to be multitasking through much of this presentation if you want to grasp the concept. And hey, if not, if you want to play Scrabble at the same time, that's great too. You just might not get as much in-depth understanding as you would if you could just put full force energy into this presentation. Gerald Clark's YouTube channel is amazing. Check it out. Gerald Clark's website is also great, geraldclark77.com. And I want to recommend you guys use the code LEAKPROJECT at geraldclark77.com because you will get a 10% discount on all of his products. You've got Mercury Rising, the 7th planet, the Anunnaki of Nibiru, 2 must-reads. Also, a 7-foot vinyl scroll, what I had called the genealogy of the gods, because he's able to break down so many different deities that go back thousands and thousands of years from a multitude of texts and scriptures. And he puts a name of many of these Anunnaki members that are a part of the Galactic Council that is referred to. And this isn't just Zechariah Sitchin, folks. There are many ancient texts way before Mr. Sitchin that refer to the Anunnaki and what they are. Hope you enjoy the presentation. Also, if you're wanting to eat healthier and you're looking for some alternative recipes or good recipes for vegan foods, check out Artistic Vegan. Krista Clark has a fantastic cooking show. She does great podcasts on her YouTube channel. And the food is second to none. And you feel good after you eat it. Have a wonderful day wherever you are, and be the change you want to see. This is Rex Bear. Talk to you soon. Without the oversight, China is not our friend, yet they pretend to be. So it's like we're giving an opportunity to make vaccines.
Did you see they have a plug-in to buy Monsanto?
China? Well, I thought it was Bayer. Wasn't Bayer gonna?
No, it was Bayer, but they're making a move to buy the chemical agents that also is similar to what they're doing with the pharma industry. They're doing it with the farming industry.
With Smithfield. Yeah, they purchased the Smithfield cows, or Smithfield Dairy, essentially, I think was the name of it. And yeah, it's crazy. I know in Boise several years ago, there was an article that came out about how they basically got a 50-mile zone, which is essentially a sovereign nation within Idaho. It's crazy, and it's all Chinese. They say it's just for factories, but who knows what's really going on in there. And they were talking about picking up an old GE nuclear facility that would be very beneficial for the Chinese if they wanted to go to war with us to just, so I think we need to be real careful with that. But let's just go with this, Gerald. I think that we're really kind of in the zone right now. The AI interface, let's discuss this, because I saw the series Humans, which I did a binge watch on Amazon, watched 8 episodes in a couple of days, and I really like the series. You can see a lot of symbolism. They've got a lot of Masonic symbology, etc. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. You just need to know what to look for. But what I find fascinating is the way they portray AI. And once this AI starts to think for itself, humans get freaked out because they know that these things can calculate more floating points per second, at least at a conscious level, than we can, and they're stronger, faster, because they're machines and they're designed for certain things. Where I'm going with this is, if sentient beings, or let's say androids, can think for themselves, isn't that essentially just a program-based thing anyway? I mean, we all are programs at some level. We were talking about how DNA is quad code. It's essentially 4 different codes. So let's talk about that, because you've done years and years of research into the AI.
Well, let's just touch on this A, T, C, and G, 4 protein sequences that make up the human DNA and the genome incomplete. First of all, there's been studies to show that it's impossible to take 4 sequences like that and actually predicate all functions to a human. So there's clearly an energetic interaction, which is light, with DNA to specify way more than we know, not just creating the meat host, but also in how it's animated. Okay? Does that make sense?
Absolutely, it does.
So we've been told that 95% of our DNA is junk, yet now, all of a sudden, with some Russian research and others, they've looked into the 95% that's supposedly junk, found a lexicon, which is a language, okay? And we knew a language existed for the protein synthesis part and the 5% that we understood, but not the 95%. Now, all of a sudden, it looks like this is metacode on top of the sequencing for the DNA and RNA transpose process that also follows very high level rules. And in that junk DNA, Michael Brown, who's a geneticist at the University of Hawaii, has found that there are polymers that do splicing that are in our genetic code that only a geneticist would know how to do, that do not occur in nature. Okay, so it's pretty clear that in the clamping process of our DNA, they probably have some latent circuits in there, just like Timothy Leary described, and I listed in my book, The Seventh Planet, Mercury Rising, that are essentially little pieces of DNA that can be triggered by your sensors, whether it's your eyes, your ears, or your energetic body at the highest level of that. And I do believe in those latent circuits, when that higher circuit starts getting triggered through this energy exposure, like going through the galactic center, it has the ability to go back and reprogram all the other circuits. So there's a massive awakening going on, and I believe that's the connection. Okay, so I wanted to share with you a picture of, speaking of how the human body interacts with its genetic code. There's a special field. Let's talk about it before we get to any pictures. There's a special field in artificial intelligence called genetic algorithms, and this was an early software effort to describe how evolution takes place in populaces of parents and progeny. That's generally how it's modeled. Mutations that show up in the chromosomes, so that this can show up as a defect or an attribute to the children of the parents, which, if nature says that's a life fit function that we think you're going to need to have under these environmental circumstances, it is perpetuated, and this is how it shows up, changing through supposedly Darwin's model. Okay, that's how it's been modeled. Well, there's very complex algorithms that do this, and those are termed genetic algorithms. And so I was very interested in those, having been exposed to those for many, many years working in the AI industry. I started in 1989, and I left that industry in 1994. So, yeah, 94. So, no, I take that back, 97. So I worked in it for 7 years in a research company that also included doing work for DARPA and others. Okay, so we were kind of pioneers in that space, and we were way ahead of our time. And usually those agencies are way ahead of the time of it, what anybody knows. Okay, what I will tell you is that out of that work, I got deeply exposed to the concept of how we modeled the human brain, which is where we view our intelligence to rest. And if we were to take that human brain and be able to go and put it into a drone or an unmanned autonomous vehicle, could we get it to behave like a human or a robot for that matter? And so that industry's been, I don't know, it really started in 1990, 89 to me. That much earlier than that were people like Alan Turing that were trying to build a Turing model that if you could administer a test to one of these inanimate objects that had a human brain supposedly implanted with AI technology, does it pass his test to fool you into thinking it's a human? So that was I think that was in 1984 or 85, something like that. So I got exposed to it through a company called Reticular Systems, where I was a systems engineer for 7 years. And when we were modeling neural networks, we had a particular way of doing it. And it turned out I extended that research while I was at the University of California, San Diego. In grad school, I took a 3-semester sequence from Dr. Robert Heck Nielsen, who was the founder of HNC Software in San Diego. He was a very important guy because his understanding of the human brain and these neural networks led to the Google search algorithm and all the other ones that came after it. Okay, so you can look him up, Robert Heck Nielsen. So in this process, we needed to understand how the human brain works, and this is modeled as a neural network. Okay, so there's a small layer of tissue on the cerebellum that's about 3 millimeters thick, where these pyramidal brain and neuron cells reside, and we know that a lot of the processing and connectivity and bidirectional associative memory that humans are able to do is stored in that region. And so I made a little video that I put up on Seventh Planet Broadcasting recently, talking about neural networks and AI, where I explained how the brain associates the outside world with its representation internally. This is the key to taking a computer and having it work the way you do. It's got to understand the environment in some model the way that you deal with it. Okay, and this is the key to it. So in that algorithm, essentially we model, and I'll bring you up. Let's share the screen right now so we can talk to a picture. I think it will really help.
That'd be great.
Yeah, I think it's this one. Let's try that one. Okay, can you see the screen right here?
Uh-huh.
Okay, let's go ahead and bring up a picture. Oh, you know what? I actually sent you that neural network picture. The one I sent you on Skype. Let me pull that one up since it's down there.
Okay.
I'll have to scroll up here and get it. Okay, be just a second. You can't see that scrolling anyway, can you?
No.
Okay, good. All right. All those terrible pictures. No, I'm kidding. Okay, here it is, and I'll just drag it up, and there we go.
Great.
Okay, can you see that?
Yeah, sure can.
Okay, let's make it just a little bigger without making it where you can't see it. Okay.
That's perfect.
Okay. So imagine the brain is modeled as a rectangular grid of a whole bunch of these little circles. Okay, you see those little circles I'm pointing at with my mouse?
Yeah.
Okay. Those are neural cells. These lines coming in here, the inputs that are coming from your sensors. Or if you wanted to have a machine, they don't have just 5 sensors, right? You could have a whole sensor interface out here, whatever it is. It could be databases, it could be cameras, it could be acoustic devices, it could be pressure sensors, it could be motion sensors, whatever you want out here. Okay?
All of the above.
Many more sensors than a human has. So let's just stick with eyes, ears, nose, touch, and and hearing. Okay, that kind of stuff for a human, you only got 5.
I got to say one thing real quick to that, because you just sparked a memory in my mind, Gerald. I was a huge fan, still am, of Battlestar Galactica. I watched the whole series. I'm referring to the 2nd edition of Battlestar Galactica. Mm-hmm. It seemed like every episode they just brought a new powerhouse to the table. It's got a lot of prophecy and symbology, and the Cylons are so fascinating. But I remember one talk that the Cylons had with each other, the top 5, I think. There was these multiple copies of these select Cylons. And the one that created the other one said, "Why did you create us in this body where we can only see 0.01% of the electromagnetic light spectrum, and we can only hear from 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz?" And the way that this person expressed it, he was so furious because he felt like he was trapped and confined with the sensors that most humans have, yet the abilities that he could have been given because he was created was far beyond that. So I found that very interesting and connected to what you're talking about right now.
Native Americans had a model that's discussed how the tortoise compared itself with the eagle and its lack of capabilities compared to what one got to the other, right?
Right.
Same analogy. So yeah. Well, yeah, it's clear our senses are quite clamped compared to lots of even critters in nature. So let's figure out how this crazy artificial intelligence computer works. Okay, this is the one they're trying to model, right? Okay, so in these neural cells, they have all kinds of neurons and axons and dendrites that are the connectivity that go to the cell. You with me? Okay, so imagine you get exposed to something and you affiliate that object with some pattern of these cells in this matrix. And I don't care what it is, an apple, a beach ball, whatever it is, it gets associated with these neurons in your brain. And somehow when you see it, you recognize it. You'll go, oh, that's a beach ball, right? Well, how does that work? Well, suppose through this first one is your eyes, this line coming in here, and it hits this neural cell, and you start this out, at birth, when they first are born, go through this process of affiliating the outside world with a token pattern. That's what we call them, tokens. So imagine a unique set of these cells that are interconnected. This one might be colored in, and that one might be colored in, and this one might be colored in, okay? Meaning that when I see a beach ball, from this distance and this angle, I go, that's a beach ball, and those cells light up. And they may be different for you than they are for somewhere else. This is your perception filter, right? Your skewed perception filter, okay? So you do this from multiple angles, multiple light levels, over multiple times, and no matter what angle or distance or light level you see that beach ball, you go, that's a beach ball. Well, now think about that. What you've just trained is this neural network to have those tokens light up under all those circumstances. That's a beach ball. Okay.
Gotcha.
It's a very powerful capability that humans have. Now try and imagine you've got to teach a machine to do that. How would you do it? This is the problem, okay? Right? This was AI's problem. So it turns out that the neural network was the key to that. As they further understood how you arrange these cells and these interconnected wires in your brain and how those wires get established or don't have any connection at all, it determines what that token pattern is when you see the beach ball. So this is context-based memory. I see a beach ball, the image of a beach ball comes up in my mind, those tokens light up, and there may be other connectivities out from that token that then trigger all the context-based emotions and all the other senses that were tied to that, if there was one. If it was just a passive, look, beach ball, I have no interaction in it, you may not have any ties to your emotion. But if you remember, if it brings up the memory of you floating in the water at the beach and the sun hitting you in the face and the water washing you back into the shore as you're clinging to the ball and all this, you may have a whole survival affiliation with that ball because as a young child, you might, that thing saved me from crashing and drowning in the water, all those kind of things. And it's different for every person, okay? So a beach ball may bring up sheer joy for someone and sheer terror for someone else.
Mm-hmm.
Make sense? Okay, so if we make this matrix big enough of circles and lines that can be iteratively programmed so the interconnectivity evolves, it adapts to your experience of the external space, you will have a unique set of a neural map of your translation from the outside world to your inside world. And it's a bidirectional map, by the way, okay? And we call this bidirectional associative memory. It goes back and forth. So when a context comes up and you've got to remember some old information, it's the same thing. It's got to go deep into your memory, find that library book, pull out that chapter, go to that paragraph, get that sentence, and boom, you pull it out, right? That's the associative part of recalling from the memory versus training it. Okay, are you with me?
Oh yeah, 100%. So essentially with this artificial intelligence setup, you could make fillings and connect those filling patterns to what it sees. So if it, for example, you're creating something for a drone, it picks up something as a threat. Let's say it's a tank or it's a specific type of Russian equipment, Chinese equipment, whatever. It can immediately go into danger mode and attack it.
Well, there are two things that neural networks are really good at if you want to use them for functional purposes in the real world. Number one is pattern recognition. I just told you if you take a beach ball or whatever that was you wanted to train, and listen, it's not just beach balls. It's millions of objects in the world that can be stored in this. This network is huge, and we only use about 3% of it. It's massive, the kind of memory that you truly have, okay? So I lost track of where I was going with that.
Networks.
Oh, okay. So what is this thing good for functionally? So if I were to train this network all up real well with all your life experiences, let's have it represent your brain just for fun. And all your experiences, all the images, all the movies, every piece of knowledge you've ever been exposed to is stored up in this network. So now if I go to the inputs here and I wanted to test the network, I could put some unknown pattern up here that I don't know if you know about this thing that I'm going to show you. I put it in here and guess what? Out this other side goes, yep, it's a match. I've seen that before, and it'll come right out. So it's very good at pattern recognition. So imagine you've got a whole bunch of military equipment out intermixed in a battlefield, and you're under all kinds of terrible light circumstances, smoke, clouds, dust, bad weather at night, whatever. And you see the profile of some object that is clearly man-made on a horizon at the limits of your ability to see the human eye, but with your instruments and your AI technology, okay, you can put that pattern in, do a 3D rotation of it in the computer, and it goes, boom, puts that pattern at the input here, goes, oh, that's a ZSU-23-4 Soviet anti-aircraft armor carrier. That is very dangerous for whatever mission I have. And you know, all of a sudden, so this whole brings up the idea of how do you do situation assessment as a human? How do you assess your environment with your sensors and create this constant evolving assessment of what is now so that you make your decisions in it? And this is a battlefield commander's dream come true. If he can be in the middle of all these disparate information feeds coming in from the air, the ground, every other location, well, he's got this complex picture to build up very quickly in order to go, I need to do this right now, okay? And he wouldn't know that unless he was able to assimilate all that information. This is called situation assessment, okay? Very, very important. And whether it's on a battlefield or in the middle of a CEO boardroom and you're looking at all your competitors, it's no different, okay? So pattern recognition, neural networks are awesome. The other thing is they're very good at prediction. And this is where the Minority Report kind of stuff comes in, okay? Imagine this represents you and I were to go put as a input scenario to the front end of this network, dissident and or sovereign citizen or defender of the Constitution. Just put that up there. Whatever, okay? You put that in there, and whether they know that about you or not, remember what I said, out the other end's gonna go, yep, I predict this one's gonna do exactly that, okay? So this is your ability to look inside a human and go, what is their intent? This is how they do it.
I got to jump in again real quick, if I may, because this is another thing that I've wondered about before. I actually brought this up on a podcast on Leak Project several weeks ago. Do you ever wonder if there are literally sims of everybody on some type of supercomputer where they're putting in different scenarios? Okay, we want a subject A to be going through this type scenario of he's told that he's got 6 months to get prepared for global chaos. Or, you know, what about these guys over here that have had damage?
Well, you just hit the nail right on the head. Imagine what they're doing with PSYOPs. Do you think they're not putting that little input into the neural network?
Do you think that the media is controlled by computers essentially, where they're like, okay, well, how can we piss off the public today?
It's more than just the media. If you have a neural network like this that's taking in all the input from every society on the world, imagine what kind of games you could play.
Exactly.
So that's what's going on with all these different military exercises. Jade Helm 15, all those were designed using
Jade Helm was designed for that. I've heard that, but I haven't really seen any.
Yeah, that's exactly. So, you know, you run the false flag up the pole, you put it the input of your neural network and you make your predictions. So if I do this, this happens. I do this, this happens. Boom. Imagine you have a crystal ball into some time space in the future between the time you decide to do this event and what the outcome is. It's like cause and effect, right? Think about the Mockingjay, the Hunger Games, where the game master was focused on nothing but cause and effect, cause and effect. Well, this is how they do it. Now, what I brought up on the screen here for you to see is how I actually did this in grad school. I decided to take this neural net idea, take this population dynamic algorithm that involved chromosomes and a mutation, right, to cause a population to adapt. And I was looking at this from the standpoint of trying to understand myself and the population and where we're going as a species, truly. Well, one of the pieces of equipment as part of our little tech dive today which we haven't done before, but we've been wanting to do, was to look at some of the things that allow you to do those kind of probings. Okay. And one of them was the idea of a programmable chip with these little neural cells in it, like the neural network I just showed you, that you could program the interconnect any way you wanted so that it could be adaptive. Okay. You don't want to just go buy a chip. It's got fixed function. Here's your inputs from the world. Okay. And this, all I can do is what I'm programmed to do, right? I can't come up with new rules for me to adapt. Okay. So this kind of chip, this kind of change in technology allowed us to start playing some really interesting games. It's like a massive parallel processor, just like your brain. So imagine this little box right here, this little Vertex, Xilinx Vertex FPGA, a field programmable gate array. It's an array of little gates in there. Each one is programmable with arithmetic functions and connectivity and little cells that can store stuff, just like those cells I showed you in the neural network diagram. Okay. Okay. So imagine you've got a huge neural network inside here that you created out of little connectivities, and every cell can connect to every cell in this matrix. And this thing is quite large, okay? Very large, as a matter of fact. So this technology allowed me to model human evolution using genetic chromosomal algorithms or genetic algorithms with mutations in the chromosome to see if I could take a circuit card like this, stick it in a rover, put it on another planet, and without giving it all the a priori if-then rules, could it adapt to its inputs and do the mission that that rover was given? Okay, you understand what I'm saying? So we're trying to test artificial intelligence now in something, in a survivable situation like a human would do. Okay, you understand?
Absolutely.
So this was my graduate work and my PhD work, was evolvable hardware. So we knew how to do this with software, but software could not run fast enough to do real-time processing using an evolutionary algorithm. And evolution takes generations to change, right, to show up. We're talking about solving problems in real time using that method. And I had some findings that disappointed me. Evolution doesn't solve problems in real time, not according to what we learned from Darwin. This was profound what I learned, Rex. Listen, if you're waiting for a zygote to get a genetic chromosomal mutation to show up as an attribute to adapt to a quick overnight environmental change, that's not possible. The only way this model works is the genetics had to be changeable, sensitive to the environment, and they had to be able to change all at once. Imagine we had a earth shift, a tectonic shift or an axis change, and all of a sudden Greenland, which used to be tropical, gets frozen overnight. Well, every animal that's used to that temperature of tropical cannot survive a sudden temperature change overnight. But we know through history, the critters have done it, okay? Look at the reptiles. They're a warm-blooded species, and somehow they adapted. Well, look what they can do. They can go into a stasis state while in hibernation, practically not using energy at all, and many other animals can as well. This is an adaptation to the environment that we don't have. See what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Bottom line is, evolution may take place, or changes in our genetics may take place with the old model where you get mutations at the birth, the child has this attribute, it's dominant, so it shows up in the species. That takes a long time. Think about that child has to grow up to be an adult, have kids, blah, 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 and perpetuate it out enough of a male and female have to have it, right? So at least this life cycle of two of those things, those entities, those children, have to grow up to the reproductive age to even have that attribute possibly show up. Well, listen, we're talking about an overnight change, and no animal matures overnight, except maybe a gadfly that has 24-hour lifespan. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Okay, but that's not what we're talking about. So I was at a loss going, okay, well, this whole theory and this whole AI concept of mutations at birth to get a change to adapt, that didn't work in real time. And I actually fell flat on my face. Some of these algorithms use stochastic processes, which are random, okay? So they pick a random seed, put it into the chromosome, run it through the whole population, have kids, expose it to the life function. Do they survive? Okay, they're good. They get to stay in, and eventually they become a parent. And they go through this loop and loop and loop until you finally iterated and landed on a solution that's genetically viable. I lost you there.
I'm still here.
Okay, I'm going to go to, I can't go to speaker view when I'm sharing. Anyway, so that's the idea. But you don't have a picture, buddy, that comes up when you go away. So we got to go put one in there.
Oh, sorry about that. Oh.
Yeah,
All
yeah,
right.
yeah, that's a drag for the editor. So anyway, so that left me a little short applying a genetic algorithm to a real-time processing problem. But that's what exposed the key to our genetics to me, was that our genetics has sensitivities to the environment where stressors can change a chicken egg in an embryonic form such that when it's born, it has dinosaur feet. They've been playing with this, okay? Add a stressor at a certain stage of development, and the old features that used to be needed for that environment can show up again. It happens in feral pigs all the time. Think of, and I did this in a video where you take your old barnyard pig that's pink and happy, you know, taken care of, fed, doesn't have to forage, no predators. It looks very different than when you release in the wild that grows tusks and is meaner than a snake, okay? And they change their appearance as well. So the environmental change to animals changes their appearance through their genetics, is what I'm telling you.
That makes me think that we're all in this simulation. It's just transferring code back and forth.
Well, now you take into account this neural algorithm I just showed you. As they keep exposing you to calamity and war and pestilence and disease, they're changing us into being these fearful animals that are emanating energy that somebody is parasitically feeding off of. And you and I talked about this. We'll get to that, okay? But let's not get lost on that right now. Okay, let me close this picture here. And the next thing I wanted to show you was just, this one was kind of fun for me. I don't know if I actually got it up here. I may have given it to you and not to me. Oh, here it is. So when you set up something complex like this, you have a tool for allowing all the simulations of all those things you programmed there in order to debug this thing. And this is what I used to do. So I spent massive amounts of time in front of a simulator like this, looking at timing diagrams, making sure everything I programmed into one of those programmable chips did exactly what I specified it did within the timing constraints and on and on, okay?
That looks like something Neo did in the Matrix.
Oh, I did this for many
code.
I did this many years. I used to build the circuit boards like what I showed you, but that turned out to be a lot more fun for me. So I gave you an example of some field programmable gate arrays that I used to do model human evolution, and that was a real fun thing for me. The next thing I wanted to do was kind of give you some,
that's cool,
kind of a common walkthrough of what we discussed as, and we both see this, is this common source for all of the Hermetic documents. Okay, and I've read most of them, and I think you have now too, and you're starting to see this, but I wanted to just cover a few of those that led me to this holographic diagram that I think we're going to probably do pretty quick. And we may skip bullet item number 4. It's up to you, because I think we got a lot of stuff to cover. So let's start with a document you like, which I like as well, is these Gnostic documents. Okay, so we found these scrolls in a jar in Egypt, in the Egyptian area, or North Africa. I don't remember exactly.
It was in Nag Hammadi in Egypt, 1945. This peasant literally uncovered a jar of these scriptures. It was incredible.
Yeah. So, and these were the adept. These were the temple priest of the mystery schools that got away with their knowledge. Do you agree with that? Yeah. And I do too. And actually, of this document, I think it tells a very real and better believable story of the character, the biblical character of Jesus, which is going to be kind of at the key of all this. So, great source. And the inspiration for all of this to the mystery schools in Egypt was their chief priest of the Great White Brotherhood, who was none other than Thoth, okay, in their documents. And this, you can read that anywhere in their documents. He shows up all over in the Egyptian Book of the Dead, him and Osiris and Isis, okay? Turns out they're relatives, right? And we'll explain that. Okay, so that was the first one that I thought was really great. The second one that I read that I thought really correlated those lessons really well, and it didn't do it more from a direct, okay, we were the adept priests writing this. It did it more from a different viewpoint. And all these documents, what I found was they're all saying the same thing with different viewpoints written in different times. Okay, if you haven't read this one, Hermetic Philosophy of Ancient Egypt and Greece, it very well ties in with the Nag Hammadi for anybody's looking. Of course, Thoth, Hermes, was at the core of the writings. And according to the records, he wrote 35,000 books himself over his incarnations. Wow. And we've only got a few of them, right? That was another one. One of my favorites that resonated so deeply with me, and I think it's written more for a scientist, actually, now that I realize how technical it is, was the Emerald Tablets. And of course, in the Emerald Tablets, Thoth claims he himself wrote those tablets. This is not translation from someone. He says this is directly from me. Like the Nag Hammadis, it's a time capsule of some knowledge that hasn't been through 50 different translations in different languages. All right. So I included the Emerald Tablets in my book, The Seventh Planet Mercury Rising, because I realized after reading all these other ones, this was another one from Thoth, but it told the story that a scientist could get. And that's why I ended up sticking with that one as my primary, even though all the other ones are great too. Jay and others really like this one. This is the Lost Teachings of Atlantis, the Children of the Law of One. And these go, all these documents ultimately go back to Atlantis, just so you know. Okay, and this one in particular, they like because it's told through humans that are adepts studying this knowledge and all their experiences and their understandings of it. It's not just, okay, here's a tablet, translate it, and then you get it, okay? There's all the human part of understanding that's included that. And some people really like that. Me as a scientist, I like it, but I like the data, okay? I like it directly from the source, okay? So
Right.
for me, the Emerald Tablets trumps all of them from that standpoint, because it's directly from Thoth, not through a Gnostic or an Adept or anyone else, okay? And so, but they all correlate, and they're all saying the same thing when you really study them all. And there's lots more of them, by the way, other than these. The last one that I really liked, I don't know if I got it up here. Oh, yeah. So in the Emerald Tablets, one of the neat things about Thoth is he talks about his commission to do what he's doing for humanity, and who told him to do it. Turns out it was his father, Enki Poseidon, the dweller of Atlantis, who gave him his commission. And in Manly P. Hall's book, it's about page 48. I didn't pull it up for you exactly. There's a discussion between Poimander and Hermes, okay, who is Thoth. And in this discussion, he's not talking to his father, he's talking to the creator of all. And I had been looking for this conversation between he and the creator of all to supplant what happened in the Emerald Tablets, where he talked to the 9 cycle masters, who are representative as the right-hand agents of the creator of all in coordinating all the galactic wobbles at the various different dimensions. We're going to go over that, okay? But this discussion between Poimander and Hermes in this book gave me 3 different perspectives on Thoth that just drove it home for me. Not only did the universal spirit commission him to do what he's doing for humanity, his father did it, and in the Adapa tale, which is in my 3rd chapter in 7th Planet Mercury Rising, where Adapa goes to heaven, Anu gave him the same commission. Okay, so all these high-level beings are saying the same thing about Thoth's mission for us. It is amazing, absolutely amazing. So I highly recommend this book to really drive the stake home of who this being Thoth is. It was the source of all this Hermetic knowledge. Okay, do I have anything else on that? No. Oh. So let's move on a little bit. So we talked about his commission in number 4 here, item number 4. And what I wanted to do now is kind of bring up a model that I worked on. Once I read the Emerald Tablets, he told us all about the constructs of the universe, and he was very clear about it if you took notes. Well, I did it, and I came up with a little picture, and I wanted to share that with you. Okay, and I put this on my blog, so if people want a deep understanding of it, I'll give you the blog link so you can go read about this. So in that Emerald Tablets, Thoth, from his scientific standpoint, starts disclosing when he was taken around a tour of the galaxy, what it is he saw and how everything fit together. Okay, so starting from the bottom here, I'm going to start from there instead of where we are. No, let's start from our perspective. Let's start from the Earth. So from the Earth, he describes us being trapped here in an avatar body whose spirit is of the creator of all. We are made of a energy that is linked to the sun, soul, spirit. He calls the creator of all. And eventually, at the end of the Emerald Tablets, he actually does give it the word God, but he doesn't do it for a long time, probably because of the negative connotations and the thousands of words that have been used for this being, okay, whatever it is. You with me?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so starting from the Earth, he describes us being matter, and that our spirit is obviously able to leave our avatar bodies and go to a certain level depending on what we're allowed to do. If you don't have this Ba energy right here, he separates it into the Ba and the Ka. The Ka energy is your energy you're born into the illusion of the hologram with. Everybody's born into Ka, okay? The Ba energy is an energy that's woken up inside of you that belongs to the Sun Soul Spirit that allows you passage through the portal at what he calls the duat. Okay, so through an out-of-body experience, people are able to cruise around, and you can read Robert Monroe's book, Journeys Out of the Body, and see some of the dimensional travels he described as locale 1, 2, and 3. And he clearly saw that there were dimensional barriers around our Earth. Well, it turns out there are real electromagnetic barriers around the Earth, and I'll talk about that in the next picture, okay? But these are the Van Allen belts, okay? And they're really real, okay? At the outermost boundary of that, he describes a portal of which humans that have an active bioenergy are allowed to go, okay? And so let's not get caught on the journey and the whole thing, but and the next picture shows the dimensions a lot better. But in general, this is what our holographic prison looks like. I think every planet that's occupied by slave species like us probably has some sort of control structure like this, if I had to guess. And we have an interface that we can work with to determine our ability to go forward in our evolutionary path. And so that was really important to me. According to him, Osiris guards the portal at the duat. Okay, at the duat is made up of 12 houses of illusion. This is the 4th dimension. So we're in the 3rd dimension here. The duat is the boundary between the 3rd, 4th, and 5th dimension. Okay, duat means 2. So you got an access out this way and the access back into our portal. Okay, so these 12 houses of illusion are occupied by some of the ancient Egyptian gods that you will see in the Emerald Tablets, including Isis and Horus and several others, okay? And there's also, so if you try to go through this portal and you don't have this path, out-of-body experience, you will be stopped, okay? So this is your restriction, okay? So suppose you get here and you've been able to make it through Osiris, who's guarding the gate and is going to give you a little test when he gets there, and he tells you exactly what he's going to ask you when you show up there. Remember the feather test in the Egyptian Book of the Dead? Here it is.
No.
Okay, well, when the soul is about to be judged, he's presented to Horus, Anubis is standing there, and Osiris and Isis are there to judge which way they go. And the weighing of the soul, with the feather versus the soul. So if you got
that's right.
And so this is kind of analogous to this exact model he gave us, okay? So if you make it to this place, you're going to get a little test to see whether you're going to be allowed to go through. According to Thoth, if you're in the duat and you pass through, by saying, I am the light, in me is no darkness, it's in the Emerald Tablets, you'll remember that part.
Right.
You have access to the 6th dimension, which he says that they have a home there called a Rulu. Now, whether this is in the Pleiades or whether it's Orion's belt, just exactly where this is not clear to me, okay? But they call it a Rulu. Enki is apparently in charge of the lighthouse, okay? And that includes Horus, Isis, basically the Enki clan, right? And what's there. And on the other side, in the Dark Lords controlled by Enlil, he is the Dark Lord or the Prince of Rulu, okay? And he shows up in the Emerald Tablets taking Thoth's mother hostage, and her name was Reshignal, okay? So you'll see that in there. That's what they're talking about. It was this dimensional travel that Thoth did in his little process to go get her unenslaved. All right, we don't get lost in the story. So at the 7th and 8th level, between this 6th dimension and the creator of all circle of light, we have what's called dimensions of chaos. And Thoth goes into detail in one of the tablets talking about the lords from Orulu, whose only job is to fend off chaos from destroying the whole model. So you remember that movie where Ra was up in this, what was the movie? Jupiter Ascending? Yeah, Jupiter Ascending. And he was fighting off the chaos, remember?
Wasn't he the one that basically gave openings to other planets, and he was the watcher over everything?
Right.
Yeah, I remember.
And he was throwing some weapons whenever this celestial
dragon. That's badass.
Yeah, well, now let me check this out. Now you're going to realize the celestial dragon in the Poimander was the spirit of the universe. It is the creator of all. So the dragon has been completely demonized by the Archons, just so you know now.
Just like everything else.
So the universal spirit of the dragon was the creator of all that met Hermes in the Poimander. So there you go. Boom. So now think about this St. George slaying the dragon. There's a psyop there, buddy.
Yeah.
Okay, so this creator, and I don't want to get lost in this creator of all specified from the void, our construct of our holographic simulator. This one set up the top simulator. 13th Floor, the movie, they had simulators within simulators, okay? There's a simulator,
Classic. Yeah.
a simulator
Yeah.
for us using this electromagnetic barrier, Project Bluebeam, blah, blah, blah. You're in a simulator here with the false Merkaba fields and everything else they're putting in here, okay? Well, this top level simulator didn't impose that. The enslavers did that, okay? The creator of all didn't do that to us. The creator of all created two things out of the void. One was called the law of time, which from my analysis of how Thoth described it, is a cymatic vibration that's eternal. And he goes through asking the cycle masters everything he can learn about time in Emerald Tablet number 10. Very, very interesting read. One of my absolute favorites. And my write-up on Emerald Tablet 10 is epic. Okay. Okay. The other thing.
Is that available at GeraldClark77.com?
It's also on my YouTube channel. I put out that section of my audio book, the Emerald Tablets. That's only chapter 5 from my book. So I put those out there. I've got the annotated version on my YouTube channel and a straight reading of the tablets from my audiobook without my commentary. Both of them are on my YouTube channel now.
Great.
Okay. So the other one, the other thing, this box over here that was so interesting to me was this creator of all created the laws of matter. And this is the part that I think you're really tripping on, knowing that everything is made of protons and neutrons, electrons. So this law of matter, how you take energy and fuse it into all these disparate components that are on our atomic table of the elements and create matter out of it, create a rock, create a tree, create a plant, create a human. Okay.
What's amazing is everything breaks down to the same stuff. So all you do is you got to change the patterns to create something different.
Exactly. So let's call this ability that the creator of all has a quantum encryption encoding algorithm that we don't quite understand, but it's real. So right here, that's what I'm showing right here. And light is the key to the creation of all matter. Okay, that's that. Think of light as the most unmanifested energy. You observe it, it could be a particle or it'll turn into a wave on you. Depends on whether you're looking at it, right? So this is like saying light is infused with the eye of God that knows whether it's being observed and knows whether to turn into this or turn into that. I call that the most unmanifested level of matter, okay? Because it could turn into anything and whatever it wants. You with me? And it also seems to have a significant effect working with your DNA.
Let me jump in real quick before I forget, because it's important. There was an experiment done in the 1800s, and John Lash spoke about it. I even wrote about it afterwards, and I can't remember the name of it. It was about 5 years ago, where there was this controlled experiment. They created these these sounds essentially, and these sounds and vibrations literally created these bugs that started popping out of thin air. It was insane. I can't remember the name of that project.
Well, look at cymatics. You can do a cymatic wave and cause a pattern to show up. Now, if you mix the right elements with it, with the right electromagnetic or quantum encryption encoding algorithm, boom, maybe you can create matter just using sound. Okay. Well,
in the beginning, there was the word.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. And the word is God, right? So let's follow through on that just for fun before I go to this picture. One of the things I focused in on a Christian as I was growing up was this John 1:12. To all who receive him, to them gave he power to become the sons of God, even those who believe on his name. So everybody who said, oh, all I got to do is believe and I don't have to do anything, they're the ones that are sitting in churches being entertained with music and moving text so they could sing, but they missed the whole point of that. They didn't read through to John 1:14, okay? Because if you put those two together, there's a receiving and then a becoming. If you don't take this energy that's coming from the law into your antenna and do the becoming part, it doesn't work.
Do something with it.
Exactly. And in John 1:14, it says the word became flesh. Well, we just said the word came from the source and the source became flesh. Well, who would the creator of all send on their behalf to be flesh to communicate with us? The messenger. Now you see it, right? And that was Thoth. It's right in the book, okay? So going back to the Poimander discussion, okay? We had 3 sources before telling him that was his mission to help us achieve what I'm showing you on this diagram, okay? So this diagram is from Thoth, and those emerald tablets were lessons for us to go from our enslaved space right here to here. That's where we're all trying to get back to the source, right? And it doesn't matter if it's a human, an Anunnaki, And a GG minor, a Nephilim, it doesn't matter. Every being on every planet is going back through this process of evolution consciously back to the source.
You know, when you read the Bible, and if you take it and compare it to maybe astro shamanism or certain philosophies, when it talks about Jesus and being the sun, I correlate that with the sun of our solar system, literally,
Yeah.
as whole. And
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
oh, that's okay. I was just going to say, and I'm wondering if when he says the only way you can get to God is through me, if it's actually some type of parallel where when you do pass this physical being and you go to the other side, maybe it's a projection through the sun. Like maybe the sun is some type of stargate or dimensional gate to the next level.
Well, it's a multi-layered symbol. You're correct. Okay. But the idea of a being saying, if you don't believe in me, that nothing's going to happen for you, or you don't go forward, that's just human control. Okay.
Oh, I agree 100%. I was just wondering if maybe in order to get to the next level, you do have to go through some type of like starport or something like that, and
Yeah,
be
you
at a
do.
specific vibrational level. Yeah.
And there's 7 layers of it in your body. It's not out there; it's in you.
The chakra system.
That's right. Those portals
Nice.
are your portals. So when you get to the top one, you're at a level where you can go back and forth to the duo at any time you want.
Okay.
Okay. So so here's another version of that same diagram. Why did I put this one up? I really did it because I wanted to show you the relationship between energy and your brainwave state and the idea of what a dimension is. Okay. What is it? A dimension is a perception, and everything is frequency. Well, where do you do your perceiving? In your brain. Can it change ranges? And this is what I have right here. It's not very clear. I'm sorry. That's delta, theta, alpha, beta. It goes from about 0.1 hertz up to about 13 hertz, or up to 60 hertz, depending on who you're talking to. This one might be clearer. Let's see. I'm sorry, it's not. Okay.
That kind of goes with hypnosis, the different levels, the lower your,
right. So if
your
you can
brain
change,
cycles.
so imagine there's a correlation between the 9 Mayan underworld frequencies that Quetzalcoatl gave us through the Mayans. Well, Quetzalcoatl was Thoth. Okay, that's all connected. Okay.
You mean he wasn't a blood-sucking serpent?
No, that was Viracocha who ran him out of Guatemala. Okay, he was an Enlilite, so they were at war. Okay, everywhere the Enkyites went, the Enlilites came to bring destruction. They were at war with each other, and it was by design. Okay, it was for us humans to see on the big drama play. Anyway, so here what I'm showing you is, imagine you had a sphere, and this was the. Okay, here's the outside one, and I didn't draw this so you could see it real well. Okay, let's use this one. Suppose this is a spherical circumference around the Earth, and then you get right to the surface of the Earth, and you have a spherical radius around the Earth. Okay, that's what this line is right here. Boom. So the circumference of the Earth is about 40,000 kilometers. On the surface of the Earth, we experience a frequency called the Schumann resonance, which is about 7.8 hertz. Okay, well, our brain waves include that frequency. Actually, that falls into alpha right about here. Okay, so that alpha goes from 7, and this one's about 13, so it's in between there. Well, is that the frequency that you're supposed to be at on the surface of the Earth in your brain waves so that you're properly tuned to this dimension? I would tell you yes, but that's not where we are. We're upwards near 13. Okay, whatever's jacking up our brainwave state has jacked it up from where it should be in a very calm, collective, and fully aware learning state. Alpha is a terrific learning state, okay? Heightened learning, to a ADD state that almost everybody's in, so they give you a drug in school. Okay, they're doing it on purpose to you.
Keeping that fight or flight mode.
That's right. Now, if you go, let's go some distance into an elevator down inside the Earth, and let's get to this number 2 line right there, okay, that I'm showing here. These are part of the 9 underworld frequencies. Be literal here just for fun. Underworld frequencies. As you go deeper into the circumference of the Earth, the frequency you experience will change as a function of the radius away from the core. Now, what if those frequencies land in your brainwave region, and there's some space from 200 meters below the Earth all the way down to 100 miles below the Earth, where if you're in that region, you can go in an elevator and see every one of these frequencies show up, and you go, "Ooh, I'm going to travel to this dimension on the first floor, 7.8 hertz." And I go all the way down to the bottom floor, and I get to the bottom range of the human brainwaves experience. Say it's like 0.5 hertz, 0.1, something like that. And at the bottom floor of the elevator, I get to experience that dimensional reality. okay? Because we said dimension is frequency, and this is how they're connected. So the reason I bring that up, in the Tzolk'in calendar from the Mayan, they had taken these 9 frequencies and put them in a chronological telescopic table of 9 rows and 13 columns that represented the evolution of life on this planet as a function of those frequencies. So you have the cellular life way down at the bottom, right? And then eventually you became a complex organism, then a reptile or a fish and a mammal. And the progression, each one of those stages is specified in that calendar. It's absolutely amazing. And then actually, that's just what's so cool, is that the October of 2011, according to Ian Lungold, we had reached the highest level of that calendar, which was called universal consciousness. That means you're not stuck in here. You're not stuck at layer 1, layer 2, layer 3. You're universal consciousness. The energy that you get to experience transcends beyond your enslavement boundaries. That's what's going on.
So is that the year of Aquarius? Is that when the year of Aquarius started?
Well, it's more about the point where you reach the great year and land in the precession of the equinox in the Milky Way center, because that's where this energy that's hitting our meat modems is so much stronger than outside that band. Okay, so think about the Earth traveling, I'm going to do it over here so you can see it, up and down in a sinusoidal wave like this through a center line. Let's call this line right there the center, okay? I know it's not. Imagine that's the center of the Milky Way galaxy. And our whole solar system, not just our Earth, is traveling like this. It's wobbling because the whole Milky Way galaxy wobbles, and all the debris that it's trailing behind it, swirling it in a circle. We're just one of those debris fields. We call it our solar system. Well, it's wobbling, catching up and back and forth, being attracted by this deep, deep energetic rift that is so strong. The gravity is so strong in there. What does it do? It's absorbing light into the threshold of a black hole at the middle, which is 14 trillion miles in diameter. That's how big it is. It is massive, okay? So when you pass through this energy field that black hole is creating in a sinusoidal way, your whole solar system, things happen, okay? Well, that was the ideal place to pick where humans get exposed to the most energy. Their meat modems and their latent circuits might start coming on, right? And that's a great place to reference this wobble on the Earth to go, where do you start counting a great year if it's going to precess by 25,920 years? Well, you do it right from the middle of the line where it's going through on the graph, like you would anything else, okay? It just so happens that Aquarius lines up with that point at the galactic center. So not only is it the age of Aquarius that's so important, the important part is we're entering the galactic center that changes the experience of the slaves in their meat modems.
So that's like, maybe it's 2 in 1. Maybe that
Right.
they all connect together.
Right.
You know,
So
you got to have gasoline to drive the car.
Well, it's good and bad. And from Drumvallo's teachings, when we reach this stage, you're going to start manifesting. And this is also true from the Mayan teachings. When you reach this stage of universal consciousness, you're at the closest place where you're a co-creator with the creator of all, like here. So whatever you're thinking, you're using your creative processor to manifest in your thoughts, whether you know it or not, is what you're going to experience. And you're going to experience it faster now than you were in the previous layer of the Tzolk'in calendar. As a matter of fact, he says you should experience it every 20 days at this point in time. So you think
Be careful what you think, folks.
Exactly. So if you're thinking and you're being controlled by your lower chakras and you're driven by everything fearful because you don't understand what life is and what this model means for your go forward path and your evolution of your consciousness, then you're going to act fearfully. You're going to manifest fear. And if you manifest that somebody breaking your house and robbing you, that's probably going to happen. If you're manifesting getting to the highest place of your optimal mission as a meat host, or as a spiritual being, having a human experience on this slave planet, and you're awake to that now in this ascension window, you can choose not to do that anymore. You can ascend, meaning that doesn't mean you avoid all your lessons and don't participate in what's happening in the world. That means you were right in the middle of it, you figured it out, and now you can move beyond it because you understand that. You don't have to do that anymore. That's what ascension really is to me. You can choose now to have a higher role as an avatar being if you want to. Do you want to be an ascended master and come back and help humans on this planet? Maybe you want to go to one of these other parallel dimensions. By the way, we didn't do dimensions justice. Let me bring this other diagram back up.
I think it'd be fun to be like Silver Surfer.
Yeah, let's talk. Well, let's talk about that. So if you're able to make it out of your energy, out of your anchor, which is your body, and have an out-of-body experience, and you're fully conscious and aware, and you can go wherever you want, that's fully possible. That was happening to me by the time I was 17, and I wasn't trying to do it. It was just happening. all the time, so much so that I ended up reading Robert Monroe's book by the time I was 17 to try to understand what was happening. Anyway, so let's talk about dimensions a little bit more. Thoth talks about 9 parallel ones that each of us can go through without having to go through the duat. These are within this dimension. These are the 9 Mayan underworld frequencies. That's what creates our 9 parallel dimensions. These are frequencies in your brain that if you can access them, you can go there. Imagine you could go to each one of these and visit an image of yourself that's competing with you to try to get to the source simultaneously.
Gerald, you know that experience I told you I had before we started this podcast?
Yep.
About how it really freaked me out? Do you think that I was down there at like level 1?
Well, humans don't have access to this level. Okay, so let's go to the top picture here. I know I got this stupid thing over here, okay, that you can't see it. My playlist number. There's 18.
You can see it, yeah, 1 to 18 or 1 to 14.
Yeah, the Emerald tablets has 15 tablets plus a preface and an introduction and one other, I think. So at the lower dimensions, there are 14 of those according to Thoth. These are dimensions that are below our dimensions, okay? Our cycle masters in the Emerald tablets are 3 through 9. That's because we're in the 3rd dimension. Going all the way up to the 9th dimension, which is this one. Circle of light, where the creator of all is the 9th dimension. 7th and 8th are chaos, separating them from the 6th, okay? So, where was I going with this? So these lower dimensions, they're very important. There's 14 of them, 14 lower, 9 parallel. Well, in the Emerald tablets, when these beings were summoned from Atlantis into this dimension, they came from the lower dimension, okay? They're trying to get a jump start in our dimension so they can get up into here, but they were restricted to here based on their galactic cycle masters. These are not even beings that have bodies, okay? These are ones that control all the different dimensions, merging them together to say, okay, these ones are evolving this fast over here, and these ones are going this way. Where do they merge together at some future point in time so they can commonly interact and get along, or whatever it is, okay? Well, this is what is talked about in Emerald Tablet 7. Is these cycle masters specifying what each of their roles are, how they tie to our dimensions, 3 through 9. It looks like we've already done 1 and 2. Okay, we're 3rd dimension now. Or 1 and 2 cycle masters are allocated to the lower dimensions. It's not stated. Okay, but there's only 7 cycle masters of the 9 that are assigned to our dimension, and they're named Utanas, Quertas, Chietl, and Goiano, Semvetal, and Ardal. Those are the ones that he calls out in Emerald Tablet 6. And they're the ones that control whether you get out of your energy body and able to have this experience through the portal, okay? And actually, I mentioned in my first book that they appeared to have the same concept about controlling beings at each chakra, locking them down until you do what they want you to do, right? Is the Hindu gods. And they actually, it looks like they're describing exactly these 7 cycle masters, okay? I found that fascinating. So with that said, let's go from here to talk about these lower dimensional beings that keep getting talked about. Who are the Archons? Who are the serpent beings? Who are the Alpha Draconians? Who are these people that are parasitically preying on humans, right? That somehow seem to be occupying, doing this, and they're being blamed for everything, right? Well, let's bring up a picture from the Ubaid period in Iraq, or Sumer, where these beings had actual pictures and stone statues that they made of them, okay? What's that look like to you? That look like a being from our dimension? I don't think so.
That looks like Bill. Looks like Uncle Bill right there when he shapeshifts, doesn't get enough blood intake.
Yeah. So in the Emerald Tablets, Thoth clearly starts...
Vaccines are good for you.
He starts talking about when these beings became greedy for power. They weren't satisfied seeking what was shown in the holographic model to get back to the creator of all source, using what the law specified. It had involved character and attributes that were permanent, not how much money could you accumulate and were you powerful among other humans so you could step on their neck. Well, these beings on Atlantis got base, according to Plato and the Critias, meaning they got full of ego and pride and arrogance, okay? And they wanted more power. So they found some rituals that allowed them to summon these beings right here from a lower dimension, because these ones are parasitic hosts on entities, on their energy bodies. They're soul stealers. They'll occupy your body, try to get you to give up your own energy so they can take you over and use you as a host. Well, these are the ones that are being portrayed as occupying the bodies in the movie. That is a documentary. It's not just a production. They live. Okay.
Which, by the way, Rodney Piper came out before he passed and said exactly that on record.
Yeah. Well, listen, Thoth said it in the Emerald Tablets. In the Poimander, he talks about it. In the Nag Hammadi, they talk about the Archon energy that was created to do this. Okay. The Archons were some of the offspring of the Anunnaki that stayed in the Levant region, that were the evil entities to the Jewish tradition at that time. And that's where it's kind of Egypt. It was Egypt and is the Levant area, and eventually became Greece. But these were the beings they were talking about. Okay. Some of the Anunnaki aligned with these beings, and they turned them into their Al-Qaeda army to go occupy bodies and control. So they didn't have to be the fall guys. Understand? We still do that today with our three-letter agencies. Okay. So that happened at Atlantis. They were summoned forth. They are vectored at the place where ritual is cited and blood is present. Guess what? They can be summoned. And it only has to be symbolic. Okay. Think about that. If you're participating in a mass, people, there's ritual and blood. How do you know what ritual is going on inside the mind of the person who's supposedly transfiguring a piece of bread and wine into the blood and the body?
Eat my flesh, drink my blood.
If you're a God eater, or you've been tricked into that through sacrifice, guess what? You're part of the ritual that's summoning these beings to use you as a meat host, whether you like it or not.
Now let me jump in real quick and play devil's advocate here for a second. There are certain, whatever your intent is, if you have a specific intent or force and you want to fill up a certain object or water or blood or flesh or a rock or a box or a car, that's cool. I mean, it's really the intent. And if you read Initiation into Hermetics by Franz Barden, he specifically says you can fill up these objects. But if you're doing it on a mass scale of darkness, which is really the underlying tone of many of these religions, is control and suppression, then you're feeding the system that is suppressing you. But at the same time, it's really weird, Gerald, because we've talked about our religious beliefs and stuff before. Or spiritual beliefs, let's say that. I was raised Christian. You were raised, I think, Catholic. And
actually, I was raised Baptist, and I was kind of pushed into being a Catholic through marriage.
Yeah, but through slavery and mind control. So essentially, raised Christian, Lutheran, went to a great church, really cool people. But then when I broke out of the religion, it's just because of all the research I did. But then since then, there were times that I would go into a church because, my friends wanted me to go, my family wanted me to go. And I got really good energy, like to the point to where the hair on my arms was standing up, and I almost felt guilty and like, it was weird. I don't know how to explain it. So I don't know, man. What do you think about that? Is that just my mind playing tricks on me because of or is it real energy? And it's good people have the right intentions.
Where a couple of people are gathered together, somebody promised there would I be also, right? Whoever that was. It's all about your intent, right? It's like people have out-of-body experiences. They're always afraid, I'm going to have an interaction with some negative entity. Well, guess what? You have the power to specify who you want to have an encounter with and who you don't with. Okay, so
I love my experiences.
If you go flailing around through life and don't know what you want, you're going to get what you get. My dad used to say, stand for something or you'll fall for anything.
Well said. Wise words.
Yeah. So anyway, the document I brought up next was what Thoth said to do when you encounter one of these dark entities that's occupying someone else or is trying to do it to you. And listen, we've all had periods where we felt like we weren't ourselves and we were doing things that we couldn't control and we didn't know why we were doing them. And a lot of times you're at a conscious level where you only see this retrospectively back in your life 5 years ago, right? Like, God, I can't believe I did that. How was I at the
right?
You know what I'm saying? We've all been there, okay? And the reason is we all start out at the lowest level of consciousness and work our way up. So we're all gullible to being drugged through the mud. Well, if you got a bunch of archons that are trying to occupy bodies and drag you through the mud and steal your soul, might make a lot of sense to you now, right? Okay. So what does Thoth say about these guys? How to get rid of them? He also talks about a lot about the dark brothers and their attributes and what they're up to. And that they've been sent packing before, but they're going to come back. They didn't get rid of them all, okay? So they're back. Clearly they're back. They live, okay? So in this—
I need some of those sunglasses.
Okay, so in this document, he's giving you, he says, now I give you the knowledge known to the masters, the knowing that conquers all dark fears. Use this, the wisdom I give thee. Master, thou shalt be of the dark of night. Okay, these words are so powerful. And I've shared this with people. And when I first started doing it, I was like, oh God, like when you had that Franz Barton book, you're like, well, this doesn't go gather the tail of a cow and brew this together, make this witch. It's not like that. He's giving you the names of the cycle masters that are way, way higher than the Anunnaki or any other species on this planet. These beings work directly for the creator of all to coordinate galactic consciousness at different dimensional levels. Okay, these are the ones he's telling you to talk to and summon them, and they will seal you so the dark brothers can't occupy your host, land in one of your chakras that you're not in control of, and guide you around like a marionetted puppet on a stick of meat. Okay, that's what they'll do, and you know it and I know it. Right, we've both been there. Okay, so anyway, he tells you to try and get rid of them by using meditation, using a frequency in your body to sweep it up and down. And if you can't, if you let the thought in and it turned to an emotion, this is too late for me, generally. If you can catch it at the thought level and say, no, that's not my thought. I'm not going to run that guy over and put a pineapple grenade in his gas tank and light it because he just cut me off in traffic. I might have done it when I was an attack helicopter pilot, but I'm not going to do it right now. Understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I'm following you.
Yeah. So, but if you let the thought in, it turns into emotion. This piece right here on page 227 of my book might be too late for you. Okay. So I'm going to bring you up the next one where he says, well, if you tried that and you didn't get it to work, try this. So starting right here on this page right here, he tells you a little process. I'm not going to go through it, but I challenge everybody that's watching this. If you've got somebody that's in trouble in your life, I mean, and you've tried everything, try this, okay? Especially if you're kind of a person of integrity, you're not walking in darkness, you're going to have a lot better chance of them listening to you than somebody that doesn't, okay? And I found in my path, when I do this, you'll see a demeanor change like that. It's like magic. It just happened to Jay recently. He was having a terrible time with one of his crew, and I asked him to, is it worth trying this for this guy? He won't do it himself, but Thoth tells you later in the stock, and I think it's right here on the fourth part of it. He tells you, see ye not that the names have power to free by vibration the fetters that bind. Use them at need to free thine brother. Okay, so even though somebody else won't do this, you can do this for other people. Okay, and I've done this before, and I'm telling you, it works. So it's very powerful, and this works real good on the Archons. That's what it's for. Okay, and just for fun, I went looking around in the Emerald Tablets. Thoth talked about having a word when they had to get rid of these serpent beings, these ones that looked like they came from the Ubaid period that could not take a body and take on yours, these ones. He came up with a word that he could speak that would unmask their countenance, and their serpent head would show up while they had this human body they were occupying, and they could throw them out, right? That's how they would evict them, the eviction process. Well, in the movie They Live, they used a pair of sunglasses and they could see them, right? I think that's even better. It's more covert, right? You don't have to let them know that you know by going, hey. So as for fun, I went on the internet to try to find what this word was, and Thoth did not give it to us, okay? So it's not a valid reference as far as I know. But it was quite interesting. It turned out to be the word Kinigan, K-I-N-N-I-G-A-N. And I went and looked in the Sumerian cuneiform script and looked at the phonemes in there to see if I could see if it came from Sumeria, did it come from Egypt? Where did that term come from? And I got as far as the cuneiform tablets, and it had some reference to a ghost and some other countenance. And I thought maybe it could possibly be that word, but I can't say for sure. But imagine you had that word. You and I'd go in the t-shirt business, put on every t-shirt. Okay, so it goes, what's that word? Kinigan. And all of a sudden you'd see these serpent beings showing up. It'd be time to stop chewing bubble gum, right?
Wouldn't that be a trip? All of a sudden, like their tongues are popping out of their. That'd be awesome.
And we bring you now the greatest beer ever brewed, Kinigan. Half the bar, people stand up and they're like, what? Anyway.
That'd be great, man. That'd be great. You could do that on a global scale. You could do like these podcasts. We could just say it in a podcast and then go 50,000 of them.
Okay. I didn't pull up a bunch of pictures or anything for you for this last topic, so I'm going to stop sharing this. Okay.
Okay.
You and I had this discussion about human energy and structure, and I think you heard a discussion about structure, its function, and energy on DOT from Zach.
Mm-hmm.
You probably didn't make the connection of what that was about. This was a paper I wrote when I was in Hawaii trying to understand the human energy body and how all this fits together. Okay.
Okay.
So what is structural integration? I came across it because it looks like a method for changing the meat host, changing this structure so that it has a better relationship with energy, in particular the gravity field. Okay, and gravity is often looked at as a force field that can be dissipated through the human body. And you're like a stacked set of rocks. Okay, imagine you could be modeled as a human as 7 segments of rocks stacked on top of each other. And you know, when you stack rocks, if you get the bottom rock a little out of place, what it does to the top rock, they have to be displaced, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that. So imagine a human is a set of stacked rocks with a elastic band right through the middle of them that kind of holds them all together. Okay, this is your connective tissue body. Well, we know that it's true for the human body, just like it is for a stack of rocks. If you don't stand up straight in the gravity field, you'll end up with lordosis, kyphotic humps, your head all leaned over. You'll have terrible posture, right? Everybody knows that. Okay.
Did you say that? I'm going to stand up here better or sit up there. Okay.
So,
it's the chair, man. It's not
so I've done a lot. So just so you know, in 2003, my boy was almost 5. He was 4, going on 5. He was still in braces on his legs. He was born with a genetic disorder and had massive medical problems. But the biggest one in our face was he couldn't walk because of what was happening to his connective tissue that was very, very loose. He had a syndrome that went with that, and that was just one of the symptoms. Okay, so this connective tissue has a lot to do with how your structure is in the first place. It's like the white material inside of an orange. When you slice it open, you have these little cavities, and then you have the meat of the orange, and it's surrounded by this white stuff. You got to peel it off, right? Well, that white stuff is the connective tissue in your body that gives that meat inside there a place to form. That connective tissue establishes the template for your body, essentially. Okay, and it's very susceptible to being damaged from impacts, from torsion, from lots of things. Okay, and when you're born, it's random. It's connected to bones. It's connected where it shouldn't be. It's connected to each other. It's connected to muscle tissue. And because of that, most humans are a structural mess their whole life, and they don't even know it. They adapt to it, and bandage gets put in here. This gets short up over here, but it's all still in the body. So structural integration, its goal is to loosen up that connective tissue so that you can relate the entire organism using lines and planes to what we know to be an orthogonal field on our Earth, which is gravity, the strongest force we encounter. So there's a direct connection that I found between structure and the function of the body. Clearly, if you're more flexible, you could have a rubber guard in the ring in the UFC versus somebody who can't do that. Understand? It gives you certain functions if you do something to your structure. Okay, and I think Zechariah Lang was studying jujitsu, which is a ground game that often involves locks and holds and things like that. So the understanding that your legs are way more powerful than your arms, and if you could use them like arms, they become even more significant. Okay, so flexibility was a key for him, and it turns out that if you loosen the connective tissue through this Rolf method of structural integration, it allows you to relate and to sit up straight and actually to experience gravity through the top of your head. If you put your 2 thumbs in your ears and put your fingers right on top of your head, that's where the top of your head is. That's where you should be feeling the spike of gravity coming right down through the center core of your body like a tube, all the way out to your tailbone, which is the bottom end of your urogenital triangle where your coccyx bone sits. That's the bottom part of your electrical energy body on a nerve complex that's called the ganglion of Impar that sits there. Okay, so that's the negative sign of your battery. And the positive sign sits right up here in your sphenopalatine ganglia inside your nasal concha. Okay, so when you're standing up in the gravity field, all of a sudden, this term of a human antenna or a meat modem might make a lot more sense to you because we are electrical beings and our relationship to gravity is part of that. Okay, so ignoring gravity is probably the worst thing any human could do. Okay, And so through this process of structural integration, an initial person would be exposed to a sequence of manipulative moves that are done manually, usually with the elbow or the hand, at a very specific, very slow integrative rate that your nervous system can stay with. You know, you're kind of getting in tune with their nervous system, and it's not designed to ever hurt by people who are modern practitioners of the work. So if you do this and you do this recipe that this woman, this really great woman, Ida Rolf, gave you as a starting point, this isn't the finishing point, this is just starting. You have the possibility of taking the connective tissue body, which is kind of like a wetsuit right underneath your skin. Right below your skin, if you were to cut it open, you'd see this white tissue that envelops your whole body. Well, that's your first layer, your superficial layer of your connective tissue. And because of you falling off bikes, wakeboarding, all the other things you've done in your life where you've had impacts, that tissue where it crosses the bone at the surface, like on your wrist, you have a bony wrist. Everywhere where it crosses the wrist or the knee, any bone on the surface, it's going to be fused there from an impact. Guaranteed. Okay? So the first layer,
a bunch of fuses then.
All over the body, even on the cranium. Do you know your cranial scalp should be moved freely over the head, but it's not? How many times you've been hit in the head with, you know, falling?
Probably not as many times as you, martial art master.
Yeah. Well, because of that, we get the first layer of freedom for a human by releasing their superficial fascia, every place where it crosses the bone, and that includes the ribs for breathing and all that. It changes the pattern of breathing as well. That's one of the first things we go after. And anyway, I'm not going to get too deep in the process, but it's well published. And this process, ultimately, if the human plays the gravity game and decides to take this last vertebra, that's the biggest one, and keep the ear hole right over the shoulder, and so that bowling ball is balanced up there, not stressing the structure that it's sitting on, you have the potential to find where the top of your head is and actually feel gravity, probably for the very first time in your life. Did you know that you can feel gravity on the top of your head?
I never really thought about it. I always just assumed, yeah, I guess, because gravity keeps us grounded, but I never really thought about a higher essence of feeling.
Well, so I went with this, and I was sitting in Hawaii, and I was thinking about what is the human energy body and how does gravity fit into this? Because this crazy structure work that I'm doing to help my kid with his fascial problem on his legs and get him out of braces, it's having the impact on me that I'm sensing energy differently. I'm seeing light different. I'm not the same person I used to be. My personality is changing. What's going on here? And Ida Rolf writes about this in her book, which I'll give you a link to. Her seminal work, and I think she only wrote one big book. You can look her up on Amazon. Anyway, so I was trying to figure out, well, what's changing? Why does your connective tissue that makes you sit better in gravity, gets rid of a lot of the pain in your body, makes you extreme contortionist if you want to be. If you want to be real flexible, you get there quick with structure work. Okay, it's taken all those collagen Band-Aids that have been sitting there stuck on your joints all over you and waking them up so that the fibroblasts that come in and consume that material makes it go away, and all of a sudden you get your freedom back. Did you know that's possible? The human body is plastic and it's completely malleable.
It sounds like it's a fascinating thing that more people really need to take advantage of.
Well, yeah, you'd think everybody on the planet would do it, but what it turns out that I found as a structural integrator, whenever you're putting hands on a body, and I've had my hands on hundreds and hundreds of clients for over a 10-year period, okay? When you go to put your hands on another body's body and you're going to take a collagen Band-Aid off, the universal spirit may reach out to you, or their spirit working through them, and tell you, no, those bandages stay. Those are the sins of the flesh and they're not ready for them to come off.
That's fascinating.
So I mean, imagine you're trying to do this work with a family member and you get that message. No, you can't do that. That's real. Okay. That's common in our industry. Any body worker knows that. Okay. So structural integration is this crazy process of changing the connective tissue body on a human, softening it just long enough so those stacked rocks on a elastic cord can all of a sudden line up into a field that they've been ignoring their whole life. And when that happens, the human energy template that forms the meat, your higher self and your material form start to merge into one. And it is probably the most powerful experience, way beyond any drug that you can describe that a human can have. And it doesn't stop there. Once you start that process and you found gravity at the top of your head, now your antenna from the time you were born to where you got to then in deviation from that field will start trying to tune it back in so that when you sit up, it doesn't hurt. When you sit on the floor and do whatever you do. Nothing hurts anymore as long as you pay attention to where that is. Now, why is that? An analogy is you can take a long pole and stick it on your finger, and you can, if you got it just balanced, you can just put little tiny motions in to keep it aligned in the gravity field, right? Especially a longer pole. Shorter one's harder. Well, humans no different, okay? If you can line up in the field, the force of gravity enacting on you gets dissipated along that orthogonal axis to the Earth. So if you stand up straight, know how to dissipate your energy, you can feel like you're practically floating when you're standing up. And this was the feeling that Ida Rolf described in her book. And I thought all about all this stuff when I was about to write my graduation paper. And I wrote a paper called Structure is Function and Energy. And that was the first time I introduced everybody to the human energy body equation, which I now call equation 5A, that's in both of my books. And so for those that are interested in that level of detail, I've derived it mathematically and symbolically. It's not very hard. But it's like Occam's razor. When you see the simplest answer, it usually is the answer. And I've not had anybody refute me since I published that. So.
And let me jump in here real quick if I can. For those that have a chance to listen to this presentation, I'd strongly recommend going to geraldclark77.com and use the code LEAK on any of the products there. And also, I just want to mention Krista Clark's Artistic Vegan website, really good foods as well to integrate with, or recipes, I should say, for foods and menus to bring to the table that will not only make you feel better and combine that with the structural work that Gerald's talking about and just everything else. And you will be a spiritual Jedi.
Well, that, you know, and I didn't talk about veganism. I have to say, I have been a vegan since about going on 6 years now. I was a vegetarian for way longer before that. Okay. But the blocks of cheese and the crackers and the wine, all that stuff had to go for me to truly find what this temple, this meat host that's trying to have an optimal energy experience is capable of. So I've always been, as an electrical engineer, I've always been interested in where energy meets matter. What is that place? And I've been focused on that since I was 14. And now I believe I've truly found it and I'm living it. And I couldn't be more ecstatic to share this with all the audience on how I got there. I'm just trying to show you my map. Okay, there's lots of different ways to the highest energy state and the universal consciousness. As an engineer and a kind of a hardcore scientist, this was my map.
That's awesome. You've really been an inspiration to a lot of people, Gerald, including myself. It takes a lot to stimulate my mind, and certainly every time we talk, man, I feel like I go to another level. That's much appreciated. And one thing that I do feel is also important is to just, if you start to take advantage of these opportunities that you're presenting, stick with it. You know, if you try it for a couple of days and it doesn't work, that's really not going to give yourself the benefit enough to really see what is going to happen if you just really stick with it for a long period of time.
I challenge anybody that wants to go down and experience this map, read my books first. I laid everything out the best I could to give you the map, okay? And I'm not interested in lying, cheating, or stealing. Just so you know that about me, I was a chief warrant officer in the Army for 7 years as a helicopter pilot, and I swore an oath that I wouldn't do that, and I don't do that. And I live by that, okay? So I'm not here to deceive anybody. I'm just sharing what I know. Is it all true? And am I going to be disparaged like Zechariah Sitchin after I'm dead? I hope not. I hope my bros will rise up and smite the disparagers just like we're trying to do now. Nobody is 100% right, okay? We can't know 100% truth in this order of reality until we're out of it and look back and go, oh yeah, I missed that one. See what I'm saying? So all we can do is give the clearest map that we can give. And I've tried to do that with references in every one of my writings. And there's a lot of pictures and tables, more than most people can handle, including the genealogy table. It's almost 7 feet tall. And I hope we see it on your wall next time we do those.
You absolutely will. I just have to put it up because it's awesome. I've got it literally. Matter of fact, hold on a second. I'm going to go grab it. This is great. I want to show everybody that has a chance to be right back.
Yeah, well, while he's going to get that, we're probably going to do a paper version that's smaller so people don't have so much space so it can be rolled up like a scroll or whatever. The ones we made right now are made out of high strength vinyl for display outside like banners, but it's very high quality. So, and we sent one to Rex here recently because we've been working with Rex to help support people to have access to some of these kind of products like the alchemical elixirs that Krista has on her website, artisticvegan.com. And Rex has a link on his page. If anybody uses the Leak Project code, following that to one of our stores, there's a discount there. So I encourage you to use that.
So you guys, this is like heavy duty vinyl. This is like almost as thick as the vinyl you put on your floors here. I'm going to pull this.
It's meant for durability in case it gets exposed to sunlight. Okay. So it's kind of like those banners you see outside on buildings that can last a long time. It's probably overkill. I was just saying to your audience that we may want to do a paper version that looks like ancient Nag Hammadi paper that's been rolled up in a jar or something like that.
It even smells good. It's got that vinyl, you know, that brand new vinyl smell to it. That would be cool, Gerald. I like that.
Yeah. So
this is it.
Yeah.
I'm going to put this on like a frame of some type. I'll probably use some type of plywood or something for the back of it.
Hold it up again, and I'm going to shut up because when I was talking, it was showing me, not your thing. Hold it up again.
So this is the vinyl scroll, and as you can see here, I don't know how well you can see it, but I mean, it is just beautiful. And talk about a centerpiece. If you want to use this, it's a lot taller than my frame here. If you want to use this as a centerpiece for your house or for somebody that's a seeker, I mean, this is just a gourmet buffet of dots blocking the audio.
Yeah, but that's cool. Yeah, but it is quite a conversation piece when somebody walks in and sees something like that on your wall.
Yeah, this is great.
Mm-hmm.
It's like 100 degrees in my garage if I'm sweating like a pig, so that's why I usually don't do video through the whole thing here.
Okay, buddy.
Gerald, it was an honor to speak with you, and like always, and we'll talk again soon.
Brother, we'll talk soon.
Cheers.
Bye.
Enki Enlil Thoth Anunnaki Archons Reptilians Serpent Beings Illuminati Singularity Nag Hammadi Mind Control latest Gerald Clark Leak Project. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us this edition of Leak Project. I'm your host, Rex Bear, and we have returning guest Gerald Clark with us. We dive into a bounty of topics, and we get deep, folks. Gerald actually worked with DARPA for 7 years, and during much of that time, he programmed AI networks combined with computer chips that he essentially designed from scratch to run some of the most incredible programs you could imagine. And this was almost 20 years ago. We talk in detail about Thoth, Hermetics, the ancient teachings that go all the way back to Atlantis. We get into the Archons, the Serpent beings, the Nag Hammadi treaties. We talk about the holographic model of the universe. Gerald gets into detail on lower dimensional beings, the age of Aquarius. Now, some of you might listen to this presentation 3-4 times and still want to go back into it because the amount of detail and depth that is presented is way above and beyond your typical hour-and-a-half program. So make sure not to be multitasking through much of this presentation if you want to grasp the concept. And hey, if not, if you want to play Scrabble at the same time, that's great too. You just might not get as much in-depth understanding as you would if you could just put full force energy into this presentation. Gerald Clark's YouTube channel is amazing. Check it out. Gerald Clark's website is also great, geraldclark77.com.
That's a life fit function that we think you're going to need to have under these environmental circumstances. It is perpetuated, and this is how it shows up, changing through supposedly Darwin's model. Okay, that's how it's been modeled. Well, there's very complex algorithms that do this, and those are termed genetic algorithms. And so I was very interested in those, having been exposed to those for many, many years working in the AI industry. I started in 1989, and I left that industry in 1994. So, yeah, 94. So, no, I take that back, 97. So I worked in it for 7 years in a research company that also included doing work for DARPA and others. Okay, so we were kind of pioneers in that space, and we were way ahead of our time. And usually those agencies are way ahead of the time of it, what anybody knows. Okay, what I will tell you is that out of that work, I got deeply exposed to the concept of how we model the human brain, which is where we view our intelligence to rest. And if we were to take that human brain and be able to go and put it into a drone or an unmanned autonomous vehicle, could we get it to behave like a human or a robot for that matter? And so that industry's been, I don't know, it really started in 1990, 89 to me. That much earlier than that were people like Alan Turing that were trying to build a Turing model that if you could administer a test to one of these inanimate objects that had a human brain supposedly implanted with AI technology, does it pass his test to fool you into thinking it's a human? So that was I think that was in 1984 or 85, something like that. So I got exposed to it through a company called Reticular Systems, where I was a systems engineer for 7 years. And when we were modeling neural networks, we had a particular way of doing it. And it turned out I extended that research while I was at the University of California, San Diego. In grad school, I took a 3-semester sequence from Dr. Robert Heck Nielsen, who was the founder of HNC Software in San Diego. He was a very important guy because his understanding of the human brain and these neural networks, all of a sudden, with some Russian research and others, they've looked into the 95% that's supposedly junk, found a lexicon, which is a language, okay? And we knew a language existed for the protein synthesis part and the 5% that we understood, but not the 95%. Now, all of a sudden, it looks like this is metacode on top of the sequencing for the DNA and RNA transpose process that also follows very high level rules. And in that junk DNA, Michael Brown, who's a geneticist out of the University of Hawaii, has found that there are polymers that do splicing that are in our genetic code that only a geneticist would know how to do, that do not occur in nature. Okay, so it's pretty clear that in the clamping process of our DNA, they probably have some latent circuits in there, just like Timothy Leary described, and I listed in my book, The Seventh Planet, Mercury Rising, that are essentially little pieces of DNA that can be triggered by your sensors, whether it's your eyes, your ears, or your energetic body at the highest level of that. And I do believe in those latent circuits that when that higher circuit starts getting triggered through this energy exposure, like going through the galactic center, it has the ability to go back and reprogram all the other circuits. So there's a massive awakening going on, and I believe that's the connection. Okay, so I wanted to share with you a picture of, speaking of how the human body interacts with its genetic code. There's a special field. Let's talk about it before we get any pictures. There's a special field in artificial intelligence called genetic algorithms. And this was an early software effort to describe how evolution takes place in populaces, parents and progeny. That's generally how it's modeled. Mutations that show up in the chromosomes, so that this can be show up as a defect or an attribute to the children of the parents, which if nature says
came out about how they basically got a 50-mile zone, which is essentially a sovereign nation within Idaho. It's crazy, and it's all Chinese. They say it's just for factories, but who knows what's really going on in there. And they were talking about picking up an old GE nuclear facility that would be very beneficial for the Chinese if they wanted to go to war with us, to just, so I think we need to be real careful with that. But let's just go with this, Gerald. I think that we're really kind of in the zone right now. The AI interface, let's discuss this, because I saw the series Humans, which I did a binge watch on Amazon, watched 8 episodes in a couple of days, and I really like the series. You can see a lot of symbolism. They've got a lot of Masonic symbology, etc. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. You just need to know what to look for. But what I find fascinating is the way they portray AI. And once this AI starts to think for itself, humans get freaked out because they know that these things can calculate more floating points per second, at least at a conscious level, than we can, and they're stronger, faster, because they're machines and they're designed for certain things. Where I'm going with this is, if sentient beings, or let's say androids, can think for themselves, isn't that essentially just a program-based thing anyway? I mean, we all are programs at some level. We were talking about how DNA is quad code. It's essentially 4 different codes. So let's talk about that, because you've done years and years of research into the AI.
Well, let's just touch on this A, T, C, and G, 4 protein sequences that make up the human DNA and the genome incomplete. First of all, there's been studies to show that it's impossible to take 4 sequences like that and actually predicate all functions to a human. So there's clearly an energetic interaction, which is light, with DNA to specify way more than we know, not just creating the meat host, but also in how it's animated. Okay? Does that make sense?
Absolutely, it does.
So we've been told that 95% of our DNA is junk, yet now...
And I want to recommend you guys use the code LEAKPROJECT at GeraldClark77.com, because you will get a 10% discount on all of his products. You've got Mercury Rising, the 7th planet, the Anunnaki of Nibiru, 2 must-reads. Also a 7-foot vinyl scroll, what I had called the genealogy of the gods, because he's able to break down so many different deities that go back thousands and thousands of years from a multitude of texts and scriptures. And he puts a name of many of these Anunnaki members that are part of the Galactic Council that is referred to. And this isn't just Zachariah Sitchin, folks. There are many ancient texts way before Mr. Sitchin that refer to the Anunnaki and what they are. Hope you enjoy the presentation. Also, if you're wanting to eat healthier and you're looking for some alternative recipes or good recipes for vegan foods, check out Artistic Vegan. Krista Clark has a fantastic cooking show. She does great podcasts on her YouTube channel. And the food is second to none. And you feel good after you eat it. Have a wonderful day wherever you are, and be the change you want to see. This is Rex Bear. Talk to you soon.
Without the oversight, China is not our friend, yet they pretend to be. So it's like we're giving an opportunity to make vaccines.
Did you see they have a plug-in to buy Monsanto?
China? Well, I thought it was Bayer. Wasn't Bayer gonna?
No, it was Bayer, but they're making a move to buy the chemical agents that also is similar to what they're doing with the pharma industry. They're doing it with the farming industry.
With Smithfield. Yeah, they purchased the Smithfield cows, or Smithfield Dairy, essentially, I think was the name of it. And Yeah, it's crazy. I know in Boise several years ago, there was an article that